Savannah is often compared to New Orleans. Both cities have the same old world vibe. But Savannah doesn't have the threat of bloodthirsty vampires like New Orleans does. Or does it? This week, I'm introducing a new series I'm calling Monster Bites, where I discuss unique bits of Southern folklore. This first episode tackles vampires. Anne Rice may have made New Orleans vampires famous, but the tales of these supernatural creatures predate Interview with a Vampire. The Casquette Girls are believed to be the source of the city's vampire stories. When Louisiana was first established as a French colony, it was largely settled by men. In an effort to keep those settlers happy, women were sent over to marry them. One group of women was nicknamed the Casquette or Casket Girls. The nickname comes from the small trunks they kept their belongings in, called casquettes. Somewhere along the way, the rumor started that these girls either smuggled vampires into Louisiana in the casquettes or were themselves vampires who were then locked away in the attic of Ursuline's convent in New Orleans. Have you looked at those casquettes? They're awfully small. Were they smuggling baby vampires?
They say I turned a baby into a vampire and left it in the Bronx.
Savannah, by contrast, was settled largely by families, and most were English. There wasn't really a call to bring in girls to get married. And while Savannah and New Orleans both had to contend with yellow fever outbreaks that were the source of some vampire rumors, it was widely accepted at the time that the cause in Savannah was just bad air. Of course, now we know it was mosquitoes. I talked about that more in the video I'll link above. Savannah has tons of mystique, but none of it has really lent itself to the creation of local vampire lore. While we don't have any vampire stories in the traditional sense, we do have a variation. You could argue that boo-hags are a type of vampire. This creature from the Gullah Geechee folklore is a woman who feeds on the life force of other people, most often men. You could argue that she's actually a type of energy vampire, but there are some similarities between how to ward off a boo-hag and how to ward off a European vampire. One of the things you can do to keep her away is to leave a broom, a colander, or seeds in front of your home. The belief is that the boo-hag is compelled to count things like straws in a broom or holes in a colander. This also lines up with European vampire folklore. A way to get rid of them was to dump seeds or grains that they would also be compelled to count. Another similarity is the use of salt. Boo-hags shed their skin at night to feed, but must return to it before dawn. There's a belief that if you find the skin, you can pour salt into it, essentially ruining it and killing the boo-hag. Salt has also been used to ward off impure vampires in older tales due to its purifying traits. You've seen holy water used against vampires in TV shows and movies, but old European stories have shown that vampires also can't cross running water. While I've never heard of holy water or running water being used against a boo-hag, the color haint blue is. The color symbolizes running water and was used by the Gullah Geechee people during yellow fever epidemics to keep away bad spirits. You can still see plenty of the color on porch ceilings, doors, and windows across the South. No word on a haint blue also works on vampires, but it does ward off mosquitoes, and those are just like tiny vampires, so I guess it does. In college, I took an anthropology course called Vampires and Blood Myth, because of course I did. We discussed the origins of various blood-related myths around the world. Looking at Savannah's history, there have been plenty of opportunities for vampire folklore to form, but for whatever reason, it just didn't. Maybe English Protestants who settled here didn't have much of an imagination. Maybe they were too exhausted by back-to-back natural and man-made disasters to be able to blame it on anything otherworldly. Of course, this could all be an elaborate plan by real vampires to keep us off our guard. But that would just be silly, right?